The world is coming to Wittenberg, where 500 years ago a local professor of moral theology is said to have nailed 95 theses to a church door, and by that single act changed the world. Germany is now in the midst of a year-long national celebration, but Luther's time was rarely this colorful or this tidy. The 1500s in Germany were cold, muddy, dreary, and rude. This is more like the Wittenberg of Luther's time, and it was a period with interesting similarities to today. In 1517, the Holy Roman Empire, like the European Union, was beginning to disintegrate. New technology, the printing press, was as revolutionary as social media. And pushing into the borders of Europe, the armies of Islam. Even though he was an adopter of this new technology in 1517, Luther would probably try to destroy this piece of new technology from 2017, a robot just installed last week in Wittenberg, which dispenses a blessing in 7 languages. It's interesting to watch a nation that has in many ways turned away from God, or at least away from biblical Christianity, celebrate this man of the Bible so enthusiastically. And how would Luther feel about today's Germany? We asked famous German Lutheran pastor Dr. Theo Lehmann, and he said he would turn over in his grave. One of the world's leading authorities on Luther and the Reformation, Yale professor Dr. Carlos Ehr, says the #1 reason Luther would be surprised by the celebration is that he didn't expect there to be a world in 2017.
Luther expected the world to end in his lifetime or soon thereafter. If Luther could time travel and visit us, he would be shocked at what has become of the Christian world. The fact that so few Europeans now attend church.
Despite the nice sculptures, Luther was not genteel. He liked to argue, and he did not like to be disagreed with. He was a product of his time, says Dr. Benjamin Hasselhorn, curator of the Luther exhibition at the Luther House Museum in Wittenberg. And Luther's times were loud and rude.
In central Germany in that time, people were not polite. They were not quiet. They were loud, and they drank beer, and they ate a lot of meat, and they were rude.
One of the most controversial questions about Luther is whether he was an anti-Semite. After expressing tolerance towards Jews early in life, Luther wrote terrible things about the Jewish people later in life, writings that were even used by the Nazis.
Luther called for all synagogues to be burned and for Jews to be driven out of Germany. He didn't call for a Holocaust. He didn't call for mass extermination of Jews. But he had horrible things to say about Jews and the character of every Jew.
Dr. Hasselhorn says the question of whether Luther was an anti-Semite is complicated.
Yes or no, was Luther an anti-Semite?
Well, I think you can't answer that. You can say no, but then you have to say he was an anti-Judaist. But you also can say yes, but then you have to say it was not modern anti-Semitism, it was early modern anti-Semitism, which is slightly different. His attitude towards the Jews was driven by religious motives, not by ethnicity or something else.
Martin Luther was an imperfect vessel that God used to bring Christianity back to the authority of Scripture. He also changed the way we worship. Ehr says Luther made Christianity a faith about the living by doing away with purgatory.
Before Luther, Christians used to spend a lot of their time, a lot of effort, and sometimes a lot of money on masses for the dead to get their relatives released from purgatory. And that changed completely.
Luther is a key reason we have so many Protestant denominations today.
When he was born, everyone in Western Europe belonged to the same church. And by the time he died, there was no longer one church. There were various churches all competing with each other.
There were many reformers before and after Luther. Ehr calls Luther the match that lit a powder keg, setting many things in motion.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer. The Reformation started by Martin Luther had so many effects Luther never would have wanted. He never would have wanted the Enlightenment. He never would have wanted the secularization. He would have many things to criticize about his church, about what it has become today, about Europe, about the Western world itself.
Perhaps these Germans are fortunate Luther will not return for this 500th anniversary to see what modern Germany has done with his work. It's very likely he would have spoiled the party. Dale Hurd, CBN News, in Wittenberg, Germany.